I never imagined witnessing a bus driver's heart-wrenching sacrifice for love. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The bus screeched to a halt, metal grinding against metal, a jarring noise piercing the damp morning air. I was just a few feet away, my heart racing, sweat pooling in my palms. The driver, Mr. Thompson, with his graying hair and gentle smile, always knew how to make us laugh, how to ease the tensions of our busy lives. Little did I know that beneath the warm facade, something dark was brewing. It was a Friday, the sun barely peeking through a blanket of clouds. The bus was packed, the usual morning rush amplified by a sense of foreboding. I could feel a tightness in the air, the weight of unspoken fears. A shiver ran down my spine as whispers swept through the crowd, and I glanced around, searching for reassurance, but found only anxious faces. Then I noticed him, the man with a wild look in his eyes. He stood tall in a long coat, grips on his bloodied hands, and an unsettling grin. It was as if my heart was urging me to run. I caught Mr. Thompson's gaze in the rearview mirror. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the wheel, the bus swaying gently. In that moment, I understood. He could feel it too. The stillness was eerie, the kind that wrapped around us like fog. I looked over my shoulder, every muscle tense, preparing for chaos. I could hear my heartbeat, urgent and panicked, drumming in my ears. "Just hold on," he shouted suddenly, his voice slicing through the tension. I could see him determined, a fire igniting in those once placid eyes. The bus surged forward, wheels screaming against the asphalt, but the shadow of danger loomed large. In a heartbeat, everything changed. The man dashed forward, a flash of movement that sent gasps echoing through the bus. His hands were outstretched, desperation written all over his face. I closed my eyes. A scream erupted from somewhere deep within, my chest tightening like a vice. Flames ignited inside the bus, licking at our heels. But Mr. Thompson held his ground, the quiet hero we never saw coming. "Get out," he roared, steering the bus toward an alley. I felt time suspend as I stared into his eyes, determined, resigned, and full of an unfathomable love. His sacrifice was evident before my very eyes. She was choosing to protect us at all costs. The world narrowed into a terrifying silence, all colors fading around me, every breath a raw gasp. With trembling hands, I reached for the emergency door. "Mr. Thompson," I cried, but my voice drowned in the raging storm outside. He was the anchor keeping us safe in the chaos, the heart of a hero willing to lay it all down. My heart ached, and tears blurred my vision, stinging like acid. I could see the man outside glaring, fury and madness entwined in his features. A clang echoed loudly, the bus jolted, and my stomach twisted in knots. I looked back at Mr. Thompson, who was wrestling with the decision, his love for us battling against the instinct to fight for his own life. Everyone was moving but me. I was frozen in time. I couldn't take my eyes off him. Would he jump? Could we make it out? In a gasp, I realized the horrifying truth. The choice was his. The crowd was whispering, breaths hitching, voices a mix of fear and confusion, waiting for the inevitable. Then, the unthinkable happened. A light flickered in Mr. Thompson's eyes, a glint of brave determination. He made a sacrifice that shattered my heart into pieces. Would his selflessness save us all or plunge us deeper into despair? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the chaos erupted around me, I felt the world spin, my mind clouded with despair. The thought of Mr. Thompson's sacrifice, quiet thunder rumbling in my heart, kept me rooted in place. Every ounce of instinct begged me to flee, yet I remained, caught in an emotional storm I couldn't comprehend. I couldn't abandon him. He had given everything for us. Outside, the man's fury seemed to intensify, his hands clenching and unclenching like a predator eyeing its prey. I could feel the tension electrifying the air, igniting small embers of fear swelling in my chest. Just then, I noticed movement from the back of the bus, the passengers inching toward the emergency exit, determination edging into their eyes. "Come on, we have to go," someone shouted, his voice breaking through the haze of panic. It was a young woman, her face pale but etched with resolve. Her presence sparked hope. Perhaps we could escape this nightmare together. That I turned to Mr. Thompson, still wrestling with the gravity of his choice, his eyes flickering between us and the chaos outside. "You have to get out," he managed, his voice strained. Each word felt like a battle, weighted with emotion. "I'll hold him off." I could see the sheer willpower in his expression, a blend of paternal instinct and bravery, but it ripped through my heart. Abandon him? No, I couldn't, but the young woman nudged me again, urgency pouring from her. "He's giving us a chance. We have to take it." And just like that, the shadows of desperation morphed into cruel clarity, forcing me to grapple with a decision I never thought I'd have to make. I glanced back at Mr. Thompson, his face a mask of courage and love, and tears spilled down my cheeks as I realized the truth. He was ready to make the ultimate sacrifice for us. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed outside, drawing everyone's attention. The man had anticipated our movements, and chaos erupted anew as he charged towards the bus. My heart raced, a flood of pure terror coursing through my veins as I recognized the immediate danger. "Now!" the young woman yelled again, and this time, something deeper stirred within me. An instinct to survive took over, our collective fear morphing into a driving force. I rushed towards the emergency exit, pushing past the wide-eyed crowd. Just as I reached the door, I cast one last look at Mr. Thompson. His face was serene, filled with a sense of purpose that ignited my own spirit. I squeezed my eyes shut for a brief moment. "I'm sorry," I whispered, letting the guilt wash over me like a heavier burden than I'd ever known. With a firm push, I flung the door open, and a surge of cold air hit me. Instantly, the world outside felt foreign and unforgiving. We spilled out, tumbling onto the pavement, hearts racing with dread and hope mingled together. But as I turned to look back, something struck me. Mr. Thompson was still there, a fixed in place, an unwavering lighthouse in the tempest. The man's wild eyes locked onto him, and I felt my heart slip further down into my stomach as realization hit. The choice I made bore the weight of his fate. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the rear of the bus, a spark of defiance ignited by Mr. Thompson as he lunged forward, shielding the passengers with his very being. An explosion of chaos enveloped the scene, the sounds of shattering glass and anguished cries painting a horror I hoped never to recall. "No!" I screamed instinctively, my mind racing through all the moments that had led us here, every laugh shared, and every word of wisdom that poured out of his heart. In the pandemonium, a stranger reached out for my hand, pulling me away from the devastation, forcing me to flee even as my heart begged me to turn back. But as I was whisked away, I felt a chilling certainty creep under my skin. I had lost something far greater than I could grasp in that moment. After we had ran a safe distance, I turned to the crowd, panting heavily, searching for familiar faces. Terror had hung above us like a dark cloud, but faint whispers of hope began to surface in the form of strangers banding together. Then, something else caught my attention, a figure moving away from the flames, staggering through the smoke. My breath caught in my throat as I squinted through the haze, desperate to make sense of what I was seeing. Could it be? Just as I attempted to take a step forward, a sudden realization struck me cold. Someone had followed us. The man was there, his wild eyes fixed onto me, a sinister grin peeling back his lips, as if my shock fortified his madness. All at once, the hope that had sparked began to dim, and dread wrapped its cold fingers around my heart. The night was far from over, and the chaos only deepened as I felt the fabric of my reality slip further from my grasp. The acrid smoke hung in the air, suffocating hope as I stumbled backward, my heart pounding louder than the chaos around me. The reality that Mr. Thompson had confronted the danger sent a shiver of disbelief cascading through me. Had thrown himself into the maelstrom, and I, a coward, propelled by instinct, had left him behind. My stomach twisted as panic flooded back, knowing the night had turned treacherous. Get away from him. A voice barked, pulling my focus back to the gravity of the situation. A few yards ahead, the young woman who had urged me to escape stood resolutely in front of a small group, her hands raised in defiance against the advancing figure who bore the face of chaos. The grim lines of determination on her face mirrored the confrontation I now found myself dreading. Fueled by a torrent of conflicting emotions, fear, guilt, and regret, I stumbled toward her, the weight of my decision settling upon my shoulders like an unbearable mantle. The darkness that had closed in around us felt oppressive, each breath shallow as I grappled with a sense of foreboding. The man carved through the crowd, a wolf hunting stragglers lost in a maze of shock. I caught glimpses of people fleeing in all directions, but the straining knot in my throat ensured that I couldn't follow. All I could do was watch as this chaos unfolded, helplessness gnawing at my insides. "Stay together," the young woman shouted, her voice unwavering even as uncertainty swirled in the air. "There's safety in numbers." A spark of resolve ignited within me. I couldn't let fear dictate my next move. If I could just gather everyone, we could find a way out. "Form a line," I cried, trying to mask my quavering voice with an urgency that rang hollow in my chest. Each heartbeat thudded in rhythm with the unease settling over the group as we feebly rallied. We hastened to create a barrier, fragile wall of bodies against this man who threatened to rip apart the little sense of security we had. As we joined hands, a flicker of hope ignited, shimmering amidst doubt, but it was fleeting. The moment dimmed when the man suddenly turned toward us, his gaze dark and fierce. "You think you can run from me?" he growled, voice rough like gravel. Just as terror threatened to seep back in, I caught the reassuring squeeze of the young woman's hand next to mine. "Remember what he said?" she whispered, her eyes fierce yet soft. "We are stronger together." "For him." I swallowed hard, the words propelling me forward. We were doing this for Mr. Thompson. Each of us had a story, a bond shared, and now, a common fight against this madness. With that thought woven into my heart, I stepped out from behind the hastily built line, creating space for those behind me. The man flared, startled by our collective defiance, his fury unraveling slightly as he paused to take in our unexpected unity. "You think you can stand against me?" He advanced slowly, jaw set, but we stood firm, an unbreakable shield forged in courage. "Keep moving," came a voice from the back of the crowd. It was an older gentleman, his face lined with worry but his stance strong. "We'll find an exit together." His call spurred us to act. With renewed determination, we pressed onward, navigating through the thickening smoke, instincts leading us blindly but purposefully. Freedom felt like a distant dream, yet it pulsed beneath my skin, urging me forward each time I lost hope. Just as we made a break for an alleyway, a loud crash echoed from behind, sending a tremor of fear coursing through the group. I glanced back, heart hammering as I realized the man had broken through our lines, rage propelling him like a force of nature. "No," I shouted, watching helplessly as he bore down on the older gentleman. In that heartbeat, time slowed. I couldn't let another life be snuffed out, not like Mr. Thompson. I shoved through the crowd, propelled by adrenaline and guilt, the urgency coursing through my veins as I rushed toward the impending danger. "Stop!" I yelled, my voice slicing through the cacophony, raw and desperate. Whether I was pleading to the man or myself, I couldn't tell, but the dark figure didn't falter. A wicked grin spread across his face as he gripped the older man by the collar. I had only seconds. The world narrowed down to that singular moment in which lives could be saved or lost. Something primal surged within me, a rush of clarity framed in desperation. I tore through the chaos, culminating in a screeching halt just inches away from them, our gazes colliding in a charged silence. "Let him go," I cried, shame and desperation rushing forth. "You don't have to do this." He paused, an eyebrow raised, intrigued by my refusal to back down. "What makes you think you can change anything?" I felt the heaviness of despair, Mr. Thompson's sacrifice hanging over us like a storm cloud. "Because we won't let fear control us," I shot back, the weight of every moment echoing through my words. My heart ached for strength that I didn't know if I possessed, but for that instant, it rang true. The flicker of surprise in his eyes ignited fleeting hope in my chest, and in that defining moment, I recognized the opportunity of space to unite our fragmented spirits against this monster. Together, I said softly but firmly, locking eyes with the crowd behind me, their voices rallying around the words. And in that heartbeat of resolve, a thunderstorm began to brew, but as it crescendoed, the ground trembled beneath us, the chaos far from over, because even in that moment of newfound courage, I felt the shadows loom larger, waiting to strike. The true nightmare had yet to fully reveal itself, spiraling into deeper madness, and ahead lay an uncharted path marred by uncertainty and decisions that could unravel everything we fought so hard to hold on to. Then, as if on cue, a distant sound carried through the chaos, a muted siren, feeble yet persistent, breaking through the haze of desperation. With its arrival, a chilling thought gripped my heart. Whose siren was it really meant for? What awaited us on the other side? The screech of tires echoed off the walls of the alley, the siren swirling the fog of uncertainty into a biting chill that wrapped around us like an icy shroud. My heart raced. Was help finally arriving? Or was it the harbinger of further agony? The young woman beside me, her expression taut, seemed to sense the same tension, her grip tightening around my hand as we stared down the alley, waiting and terrified. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the cacophony, determination sparkling in her eyes. It was a promise, a flicker of unwavering solidarity amidst the dread that clung to us like the acrid smoke. In the distance, the siren grew louder, its wail sharp and high, drowning out the chaos. I glanced back to the older gentleman, whose breathing now felt ragged under the weight of the man's grip. The darkness that had shadowed him didn't dissipate, it wrapped around us, coiling tighter as the seconds stretched into an unbearable silence. "Let him go," I pleaded again, stepping forward despite the threat looming before me. With each forceful heartbeat, the atmosphere felt charged, and I could almost taste the fear, thick like honey. Yet, even in that moment of desperation, I felt something else, a flicker of hope igniting again, one that had been stifled too often in the past. Suddenly, the shadow of the man loomed larger, his expression morphing from malicious glee to confusion as he processed our combined defiance. It was almost comically juxtaposed against the chaos, this fragile moment where his power was being challenged by our shared humanity. The siren shrieked with urgency, echoing in my chest. "Why are you fighting for each other?" he snarled, his voice dripping with disdain, almost mocking. "What have you to gain?" His words struck deep, a sharp dagger driving into the wounds of uncertainty that riddled my soul. What did we gain? The answer was simple but profound: love, hope, and the innate desire to protect one another. Just when I thought the humility of our cause had begun to resonate with him, a flicker of something sinister ignited behind his eyes. The sudden shift in his demeanor sent a jolt of electricity through the crowd. I could sense their fear culminating into doubt, and for a moment, it felt as though everything might unravel into chaos once again. "Nothing you do will change the outcome," he spat, his fingers tightening like a vice around the older man's collar. "You are all just sheep, and soon you will understand your place in this world." In that heartbeat, I recognized the power that fear wielded. It was paralyzing and destructive, but it also fueled the faintest spark of rebellion within me. I couldn't allow that darkness to smother the hope we had ignited. "We are not afraid," I shouted, voice ringing with defiance, surprising even myself. "We stand together now, and you can't take that away from us." The people behind me began to murmur, the whispers growing louder as they rallied around the idea. "Together," they echoed. "Together." The moment shifted, tension giving way to a quiet fortitude. I felt the energy of the group suddenly. We were not just individuals, but a living, breathing entity. The kimono-wrapped threads binding us to one another created an unbreakable fabric of solidarity that couldn't be torn by fear alone. But hope is a fragile thing. With a sudden ferocity, the man hurled the older gentleman backward into the brick wall, releasing him like a discarded rag doll. The sickening thud echoed around the alley, drawing gasps from the onlookers. Adrenaline surged in me, a tempest of horror and rage bubbling up. "No!" I screamed, my body propelled forward without thought. I needed to protect him, protect them all. Just as I reached the older gentleman, the sinister look on the man's face twisted into one of savage glee. The world grew heavy and slow, the shadows thickening again as he locked eyes with me, and raised a hand, no longer a mere threat, but a harbinger of violence, a specter demanding to be fed. Your noble heart will only lead to your demise, he warned, as darkness rolled off him like fog, curling against the light. And in that moment, the distant siren transformed into a cacophony of dread, pricking at my skin as fear thundered in my veins. Just as I was about to shout, to plead, the world exploded with sound around us. The sudden flash of lights illuminated the alley, a brigade of uniformed figures surging into view: police, firemen, responders. Relief crashed over me in waves, an intoxicating euphoria bubbling within. But as quickly as hope flared, a chilling realization clawed at my gut. The man was laughing, a chilling sound that would echo in my mind long after this night had passed. You think they can save you? With the chaotic scene unfolding and the uniformed figures rushing closer, I felt my heart plummet. Something told me this was only the beginning. A storm was brewing. What would they find when they arrived? Would they see the horror in front of them? Would they treat us as victims, or worse, as instigators? My voice trembled as I managed to call out, "Help us, please." But did they know what they were stepping into? Did they understand the depth of the darkness we faced? As the red and blue lights flickered like unwanted memories through the haze, I felt the clouds swirl above, the growing tempest coming full circle. Not just battle, but a reckoning looming ahead. Whatever veil existed between safety and danger snapped like a fragile thread, and I braced myself, knowing the worst was yet to come. The brilliance of the lights was blinding, yet the shadows remained coiled at the edges of my vision. As the first responders rushed forward, their presence stirred a mix of relief and trepidation in my chest. I wondered whether they understood the true nature of the battle unfolding before them. The man loomed ominously in the awakening chaos, unyielding and proud amidst the influx of authority. "Step aside," a commanding voice boomed, slicing through the air like a knife. Officers pushed their way past the onlookers, eyes scanning the scene for threats, while others rushed to aid the older gentleman, who lay crumpled against the wall. "Help him," I shouted, desperation pouring from my voice. Yet, I noticed how the officers hesitated, caught between their training and the palpable menace that loomed in the alley. The man, the embodiment of hatred, stepped back, eyes glinting with an unsettling kind of delight. "They won't save you. They'll do nothing but watch, just like everyone else." With his words, the simmering dread ignited anew, feeding back into the very core of our collective fear. I felt it cresting like a wave, threatening to wash away the last remnants of hope. Just then, my gaze fell upon the older gentleman, whose eyes were wide with shock, reflecting the uncertainty that hung between us. He might not survive this insanity that spun around us like a tornado, scattering fragments of our resolve to the wind. One of the responders, a young woman with fierce determination etched across her face, moved to kneel beside him. I could see her lip tremble as she assessed his injuries. "He needs immediate attention. Get the medic over here." I cringed at the panic in her voice, but it was a glimmer of humanity, a small beacon in an all-consuming darkness. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance for a collective rise against the despair. Yet the man dismissed her entirely, his laughter banishing the compassion she offered. "You're all fools, if you think you can change anything." His eyes darted between the authorities and me, daring us. Then, beneath the chaos, there was a shift, a subtle fracture appearing within the crowd. I could see the terror on the faces of those around me, the whispers beginning to weave themselves into a tapestry of division. Some clung to one another, while others were slowly drawing back, recoiling from the tension as it thickened. And oh, I screamed out, not only for myself, but for them all. "Stay strong. We are together." The breath of my words drifted through the narrowing alley, almost palpable. I could feel a few hold on to the sentiment, but for others, the fear had crept in too deeply, whispering lies that made them retreat. It was a crack, a fracture I had never anticipated. As the responders continued to unravel the tension, I realized that not only were our bodies threatened, but our spirits were vulnerable. The very essence of our resolve was hanging by a thread, straining against the weight of despair. In that moment, I looked toward the young woman at my side. Could we truly fight against this darkness that threatened to swallow our small alliance? She caught my gaze, and I saw a determination mirrored in her eyes that comforted me, a shared echo of the promise we made to protect each other. But the man wasn't done yet. He took a step forward, his voice now low and taunting, unfurling like black smoke. Do you really believe you can fight against what you have created? The chaos? The disarray? It's all part of your own design. His words slithered into my consciousness, planting seeds of doubt. What if he were right? What if this was all for naught? A shudder ran through me, but the woman beside me tightened her grip, her fingers steadying my wavering heart. We mustn't give in. We've come too far. And at that moment, I saw an unfamiliar figure lurking at the edge of the crowd, a bus driver, worn and weary, with kind eyes that seemed to absorb the anguish swirling around us. As he stepped forward, he seemed to bridge the gap between those who had stepped away and those who remained, embodying a flicker of hope in the darkness. Everyone, he called out, voice unyielding despite the chaos. Listen to me. Love persists even in the darkest of nights. We cannot abandon each other now. His words were like a gentle pulse against the tide of despair. I felt pockets of fear dissipate as some shifted forward, while others hesitated yet again. But behind the bus driver's encouraging display, the man's face darkened with fury. Do you think your little parables of love and hope are enough? He roared, the energy ricocheting through the crowd. All I see is cowardice, depthless cowardice waiting for the reaper. Just as the air trembled under his wrath, the old gentleman inhaled raggedly, his eyes flickering from the bus driver to the man. I saw recognition dawn upon his face, not just fear mingled with pain, but a shared understanding etched into the scarred lines of his aging visage. Then the unthinkable happened. The older man whispered something, barely audible over the thrumming drum of chaos. But as I edged closer, I caught Ida's name. Marisol. Time seemed to pause, and in that instant, the very fabric of our collective struggle shifted. A bare thread, laden with emotions unspoken, unfurled before us. Before I could decipher what it meant, a sudden flash cut through the air. The young woman beside me gasped, eyes wide with realization. That's her. That's Marisol, the one they took. The revelation hung heavy between us, weighted with desperation and the sense that our fates were now inexorably intertwined with naming this darkness we faced. The man's laughter erupted, harsh and jagged, a sound that reverberated in our bearings. Come then, he baited, the promise of chaos on his lips. Come find the one you call Marisol. But remember, knowledge has consequences, and love demands sacrifice. AS armed officers moved to surround the man. The tension crackled like static energy. With a heart racing against the tides of fear and hope, I knew then this was just the beginning. We stood on the precipice of a choice that would change everything. The darkness swelled around us, but in that weighty silence, I felt a new resolve bubbling up. Whatever awaited us, I would stand firm, for love was worth the fight even against the tempest that threatened to consume it all. And just as I steeled myself to take a step forward, the world fractured once more. The bus driver lunged into the fray, drawing the man's attention away, and I realized the heart-wrenching truth. I had to make a choice, and soon, before it was too late. The chaos pulsated like a living creature, hungry for more as the thrumming heartbeat of the crowd quickened. Everyone watched with rapt attention, eyes flicking between the bus driver, who had just thrown himself into the fray, and the menacing figure who seemed emboldened by our confusion. Stop, I shouted, not quite believing I'd uttered the word, my voice barely making it through the murmur of disbelief rippling across the alley. My heart raced, the realization of the driver's intent carving a sharp line of dread through my being. You can't face him alone, but he was already advancing, his body a barrier of defiance against the tide of despair. This isn't your fight, he called back at me, his voice steady, embodying a strength I so desperately craved but had yet to find within myself. In his eyes, I saw a flicker of determination bridged with vulnerability, the raw essence of what love could demand. The man invoking fear with every sneer seemed to revel in the bus driver's courageous foolishness. And what precisely do you hope to achieve here, brave soul? Love is a fleeting flame, easily extinguished. As the man laughed, the sound seemed to twist the air around us, wrapping our spirits in a cold embrace. But the bus driver, fixed and resolute, remained unfazed. You don't know love, he shouted back, and I marveled at the conviction that spilled from him. It binds us, uplifts us, gives us courage to fight against despair. His words hung like lanterns flickering against the encompassing dark, beckoning hope forth from the fragility of our rampant fears. That I felt the connection in the air shift, energized, the crowd absorbing his fervor as if it were light. Yet still, shadows loomed large. The man's expression changed, the amusement peeling back to reveal something darker, a hinted understanding that perhaps his grip on this chaotic narrative was slipping. Fools, all of you, he raged, panting like a wounded beast. Your defiance means nothing. You are all bound by your own chains. And in that moment, I could see the ordinary faces of the crowd contorted with uncertainty, rapidly questioning the strength of our collective resolve. As the bus driver pressed forward, I felt the weight of my own choices crashing down like waves against the rocks. Do I join him? Do I trust in the strength of love that we'd latched onto in this tempest? Or did I step back, allowing fear to pull me away from the very essence we sought to protect? And then, in the corner of my eye, I caught the older gentleman gripping tightly at his own chest, his breath hitching at the newfound revelation of Marisol. She was my daughter, he gasped out, the confession weaving through the confusion like a silent plea. My heart clenched at his admission. This was more than just a fight, it was personal, entwined with the strands of loss and resilience. The young woman beside me momentarily forgot her fear, lifting her chin defiantly. Then we fight for her. Marisol deserves to be found. And suddenly, it felt as though the air had shifted again, lifting us with a fragile thread of hope, piecing together our collective purpose. But it was fleeting. The man roared, his anger erupting into sheer rage. You think your love can shift the tide, can snuff out the storm? You will see there is no escaping the shadows of your own making. With an agonizing clarity, I recognized then that the selfishness of his hatred was woven into the very fabric of our fears, and yet there remained a determination that surged from the fragile bonds we had fostered amongst ourselves. I won't back down, I shouted, finding strength in my own voice. The tremors of uncertainty disbanded as I felt warmth unfurl within me, a solidarity building upon the small acts of courage that had ignited a fire. Well, face it together, shouting erupted, echoing through the alley, a cacophony of voices pooling into one resounding affirmation. We would not become shadows. Just as the moment reached its zenith, the bus driver suddenly caught my eye, his expression aching with a kind of knowing that sent an electric current through my chest. It's not just about love, he shouted, his voice breaking through the sea of desperation. It's about sacrifice. What would you risk to save her? His words landed heavy in the air, an unsheathed dagger of realization piercing through our frenzy. And in that unguarded instant, we each felt the weight of the decision lodges somberly within us, a choice that was gripping and real, echoing profoundly in our hearts. But the man had seized on our vulnerability, eyes blazing with malice. You'll lose everything if you stand against me, he hissed. The laughter that followed echoed like a death knell. The moment stilled a loaded silence, thick with the promise of confrontation. Breaths held tightly as the crowd braced for a blow. But then, before anyone could process it, the young woman caught my sleeve, pulling me sharply sidelong, and her voice sliced through the quiet. Look, confusion erupted as we turned together, but amidst the stretching shadows lurking, a warmth broke through, an unexpected glow illuminating the far end of the alley. Figures emerged, moving as if guided by an unseen force. More responders, community members, armed not only with authority, but the undeniable will to stand against our fleeting fears. With renewed urgency, our collective resolve surged, recognizing that this was not just one man holding power over us, but a battle we could win by standing unwaveringly together. But as hope swelled within me, the older gentleman suddenly cried out, Marisol, as something indistinct slipped momentarily into view, flickering against the far wall. My pulse quickened, warring with the darkness that clawed at my spirit, as I awaited the final breath of this realization, a choice teetering on a knife's edge. True love had ignited the air, but I knew that discovery could come at a harrowing cost. All eyes were on the flickering light, and with everything at stake, I dare not look away. Would it be salvation, or the heart-wrenching closure of our fate? A moment stretched, eternal and electrifying, as the faces of the crowd converged into a singular expression of hope tinged with dread. My breath caught as I watched the flickering presence at the far end of the alley. I felt the air grow thick with expectation and uncertainty, each heartbeat echoing a primal blend of desperation and longing. Marisol. The older gentleman's voice reverberated through the space, a desperate plea interwoven with the fragments of his love, and it hit me like a wave. Every soul in the alley leaned forward, eyes locked on the shadowless silhouette gaining form, yet remaining shrouded in ambiguity. "Please, let it be her," the young woman beside me whispered, her lips trembling, eyes reflecting every flicker of light and shadow. I could feel her urgency, the yearning for revival amidst the desolation that had seeped into our hearts so deeply. Around us, the murmurs of uncertainty swelled, an undercurrent of dread washing upon us as we stood poised on the brink of a miracle or another heart-shattering turn of fate. But then, the menacing figure who had stirred our fears rooted himself further into the fray, muscles taut and ready to unleash chaos upon our gathered resolve. His laughter peeled back once more, revealing jagged edges of bitterness and rage. "Do you think hope will save her?" He sneered, the confidence dripping from his each word like venom. "You are nothing more than broken puppets reliant on a fragile string of dreams." In that moment, darkness clashed vehemently with the flickers of light. My heart thundered, aching for our collective vulnerability to transcend into unyielding strength. "He's wrong," I shouted above the tumult, passion igniting like a beacon. "We are not puppets. We are the sum of our love and pain. Even if we're broken, we can find a way to mend." Eyes met mine, drawn into the raw honesty of my declaration. Like waves crashing against the stoic cliffs, resolve rallied amongst the crowd faces stealing under the pressure of a burgeoning fight. Quiet understanding weaved through our assembly, an invisible tether that bonded us, binding our fears together as one single force of resilience. The silhouette shifted, flickering further into clarity as the figures drew closer, and I saw Ida familiar frayed t-shirt, a threadbare sweater that had once cradled her laugh. My heart surged as I took a hesitant step forward, recognition tethering me between the precipice of terror and overwhelming hope. The crowd sensed it too, collective breaths hitching as tension morphed into palpable anticipation. But Thena strike. The menacing figure, feeling the tide wrest control from him, lunged forward, wild fury painted on his face. "You will all bow," he roared, a tempest of agony swirling in his voice as he plunged towards us, intent on unraveling the hope stitched so tenderly in our hearts. Sudden movement from the bus driver caught my eye, his figure unapologetically throwing itself in the path, a willing offering to absorb the blow. "No," I screamed, a ghastly thrill piercing my heart. "Not like this." The collision was loud, breaks of air snapping like twigs beneath the weight of raw emotion and sacrifice. In that moment, time suspended as I watched the bus driver absorb the impact, a physical manifestation of love's profound sacrifice, crumbling into the detritus of confusion. The crowd gasped collectively, stunned, as if the air itself had turned to stone, grief pulsing around us along with our fear. "No, no, no," the mantra spilled from my lips, despair coiling around me as I bore witness to this heart-wrenching act, a brave soul lost amid the tempest as shadows loomed over us. But in the depths of despair, I caught a glimpse of movement, Marisol's silhouette emerging, no longer a shadow at the end of the alley. The crowd gasped as she came into focus, the light breaking through the veil of darkness like dawn creeping into the night. A figure both treasured and hauntingly familiar. "Dad," she cried, the word ringing with a resonance that shattered the grief in a heart-stopping fractal. A cascade of emotion unfurled, a daughter reaching for the father who had lost everything for love. The older gentleman stumbled forward, his face a canvas of anguish and hope, tears cascading freely as he rushed towards her, arms outstretched. But within that chaos, as they fell into each other's embrace, the wounds of sacrifice bled anew. I felt the piercing anguish bubbling within me as I glimpsed the bus driver's crumpled form lying, abandoned and fragile, figure navigating the thin line between profound loss and miraculous reunion. The man, seething rage instantly metamorphosing into disbelief. stood frozen as community erupted into chaotic movement rebellion against despair ignited by the powerful embrace that reverberated hope into the dark abyss. I took one shaky step forward, eyes locked onto Marisol's sorrow-drenched face, hearts entangled in this exquisite tapestry of love and sacrifice. But before I could fully comprehend the scene unfurling before my eyes, a distant sound tugged at my consciousness, an urgent ringing that echoed through the alley. The resonance cut sharply. Amplifying my fears, it was a siren, the arrival of authority, steady and resonant. In that bittersweet moment, I realized the weight of our actions had only begun to unfold. The chaos was still far from ending, and with conflicting emotions stirring fiercely within me, I understood that true countdown had begun. The reckoning for our choices loomed ominously ahead, and the narrative was far from complete. Marisol's expression shifting from joy to horror as shadows stirred anew. A chilling recognition washed over us all. The fight for love had come at a price, and now we would have to face the consequences, for the shadows we had driven back began to creep forward once again, more threatening than ever. Marisol, the bus driver, whispered weakly, pain etched on his face, the embodiment of sacrifice straining against fate. Would we emerge victorious, or fall into a deeper despair as we carried the weight of our choices into an uncertain future? With each heartbeat, I pondered how much love could truly bear, teetering dangerously close to the edge of a precipice that threatened everything we cherished. The siren's wail pierced through the fragile cocoon of emotions that had enveloped us, sending an icy shudder across the crowd. It was a cruel reminder that while we celebrated one reunion, we were on the cusp of losing so much more. Within the chaos, I saw Marisol's face drain of color, her joy rapidly giving way to the cold embrace of reality. "Stay with me, Marisol," the older gentleman called, his voice thick with desperation as he hugged her tightly, unwilling to lose her again. "We need to get out of here. It's not safe." But Marisol seemed anchored in place, looking over her shoulder, unsure whether to stay with her father or run towards the bus driver kneeling on the ground, each gasping breath a mixture of agony and profound strength. "I can't leave him," she finally choked out, her voice trembling under the weight of impossible choices. The bus driver's eyes glistened, struggling to remain open as he fought against the pain coursing through his body, a warrior clinging to the last remnants of consciousness. "Call for help," I shouted, urgency surging through me as I tore myself away from the magnetic pull of Marisol and her father. I scrambled toward the fallen bus driver, my heart echoing wildly at the thought of losing yet another sole consequence of our struggle against hopelessness. "Please hold on. Help is coming." I knelt by his side, my hands shaking as I pressed against the wounds his brave heart had sustained. Blood seeped through my fingers, hot and heavy, weaving together strands of life and death, a vivid reminder of the fragile boundary that separated the two. "Stay with me," I murmured, words defying the dread that wrapped around my heart. "You're not alone. We're going to get through this. Just hold on." He squeezed his eyes shut, every pulse a battle against the inevitable. I could feel the collective gaze of the crowd, a heavy weight of shared dread resting on my shoulders. Faces blurred together, each a reflection of their own fear and hope for this man who had thrown himself into the fray for us. With trembling hands, I reached into my pocket, pulling out the fabric that had once belonged to him, a piece of the bus driver's torn jacket that had fallen when he lunged. "You remember this? You told me once that these threads held stories and secrets," I cried, my voice thickening with emotion. "This fabric carries a part of you. You can't let it end here." "Why?" he rasped, his voice barely above a whisper. But within that solitary sound lay a world of confusion and pain, the agony of knowing he may never see the faces of those he had fought for again. "Why did you come back?" "Because we need you," I said, my own heart cracking under the weight of raw truth. "We've lost so much already, and we can't afford to lose you too." Suddenly, a flicker of recognition crossed his features, just for a moment, before the shadows began to creep across his gaze once more. "Find them," he breathed, the urgency burning through his words. "Find the little ones, they need you." "What little ones?" I pressed frantically, desperate to unravel whatever mystery seemed to hang between his threadbare breaths. But before he could respond, a flicker of reality roared back to life around us. The sirens grew closer, their wails mixing with my mounting panic. Among the crowd, people began to disperse, fear claiming the air as uncertain futures hovered where hope had once ignited. "Marisol, please," I called over my shoulder, the desperation in my voice a plea, a lifeline thrown into the fray. "We need to keep moving." Her father's grip tightened around her, panic etched in every line of his face. "We can't leave him," he yelled, his voice trembling dangerously as he teetered between raging angst and profound grief. But as I looked back at the bus driver, his strength waning like the setting sun, shadows deepened hauntingly around us. If we stayed, more sacrifices would be made. If we fled, would I carry that burden forever? And then, I felt the unmistakable thrum of the ground shaking beneath us, erupting into a profound tremor that sent us stumbling back. "What's happening?" Marisol's voice rang out, filled with panic. I turned, a knot of dread clenching my stomach. Emerging from the alleyway behind us, a figure twisted in darkness stepped forward, a silhouette surrounded by tendrils of shadows, the source of the previous menace. They seemed to glimmer with the remnants of fear, becoming tangible in a way that felt terrifyingly real. "You've stirred quite the mess tonight." The voice was low and mocking, an eerie melody thrumming against my armor of courage. "You've been given a chance, and yet, what did you choose?" With my heart racing, I felt the weight of the bus driver's life pressing against me like a heavy stone forged from our collective sorrows. Every fiber of my being screamed I could not let another light extinguish, yet here it loomed again, the darkness inching back, ready to swallow us whole. "Run!" I shouted, fear igniting within me. I reached for Marisol, grasping her hand firmly, but even as we leapt forward, an overwhelming dread shadowed my heart. The shadows rushed toward us, swirling in a fog of regret, a reminder that somehow, amidst our victories and losses, the reckoning had only just begun. I met the bus driver's eyes one last time, a silent vow echoing between us before the darkness swallowed what remained of that moment, leaving a haunting whisper rattling through my weary soul. Could love truly conquer? Or were we simply dancing with shadows, spiraling deeper into a night unending? The world around us exploded into chaos as the shadows surged forward, their tendrils grasping at our ankles like desperate souls clawing for salvation. My ears buzzed with the sirens, a cacophony drowning out all reason. With Marisol's hand firmly in mine, we stumbled away from the nightmare, yet I could feel the weight of the bus driver's last words still pressing against my chest, heavy and unrelenting. "Where do we go?" Marisol's voice trembled, threading through the noise like a fragile thread in a storm. I turned to scan our surroundings, but everything had become a blur of movement and fear. The streetlights flickered, creating an eerie dance of light and shadow. It was as if the very fabric of our reality was fraying at the seams. "Anywhere but here," I shouted back, tugging her toward the side street, a narrow alley that veered away from the chaos and the shrieks of the crowd. Every step felt wrong, yet there lay an instinct deep within, urging us forward, away from the darkness that pursued us. We ducked into the alley, and for a heartbeat, the noise eased, replaced by the sound of our ragged breaths and the rapid beating of my heart. I turned to Marisol, who was shaking, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and confusion. I wanted to tell her it would be okay, that we would find a way through this, but even my own voice trembled with uncertainty. "Are you all right?" I asked, even as guilt gnawed at me for leading her into the fray. She nodded, but her lips trembled, and my heart twisted with the knowledge that she was holding back her true feelings. "What about the bus driver?" she whispered, glancing back toward the mouth of the alley, as if somehow hoping he would emerge unscathed from the darkness. I felt my throat constrict. "Well, remember him," I said softly. "He fought for us. We owe him that much." The words felt weak, thin against the backdrop of the sacrifice he had made. The gravity of loss pressed down on my chest, forcing the air from my lungs. But even in that suffocating grief, I found a flicker of resolve within. May's bravery could not be overshadowed by despair. As we pressed deeper into the alley, the shadows receded, momentarily thwarted by the decrepit buildings that closed around us. The alley opened into a small courtyard, illuminated by a faint shaft of moonlight cutting through the clouds above. In that dim glow, I could see the remnants of a forgotten garden, vines twisting and curling around the wrought iron fencing, the beauty fighting against decay. "Let's take a moment," I suggested, guiding her to a worn stone bench nestled amid the overgrown foliage. We both fell into its embrace, the cool stone providing a brief respite from the chaos that roiled in the world beyond. Do you think he's okay?" Marisol asked, her voice barely more than a whisper as she kept her gaze fixed on the ground, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "Point two, hope so. We have to believe he's being taken care of. Help is on the way," I replied, though uncertainty lay thick in my throat. Each word felt insufficient against the truth we had witnessed. She nodded, but the tears that brimmed in her eyes told a different story. "I can still hear him asking about some little ones," she murmured, pain lacing her voice. What do you think he meant? The question hung heavy between us, the weight of its implications carving deeper into the fabric of our reality. "I don't know, but we might need to find them," I started, but trailing off left a cold chill in the air. Just as I was about to propose a plan, a flicker of movement caught my eye from beyond the courtyard. Emerging from the shadows was a small figure, a child, with disheveled hair and wide, frightened eyes. My heart leapt. "Hey," I called, standing and extending a hand. "It's okay. You're safe with us." The child looked back toward the darkness, fraught with fear, and then darted toward us, collapsing into Marisol's arms. She held the small body tightly, wrapping her arms protectively around him as he trembled, his breath hitching in a silent sob. "What's your name?" I asked gently, crouching to be at eye level with the boy, who peered at me with cautious eyes. "Miguel," he whispered, eyes darting around the courtyard, fear etched into the fine lines of his young face. "I was hiding. They took my sister." Panic surged through my being like fire igniting dry grass. "What do you mean, Miguel? Who took her?" He trembled harder, and Marisol's embrace tightened instinctively around him. "The shadows. They took her when the bus crashed." I ran, but he faltered, his small chest heaving with the aftermath of sheer terror. "Where did they take her?" My voice was sharp, a desperate plea for clarity. "I don't know. They just disappeared." His cries echoed the haunting urgency that coursed through my veins. I turned to Marisol, whose eyes were filled with determination now, mixed with sorrow for the boy before us. The shadows trailing us had claimed another innocent life, and the urgency of his plea felt like an anchor, dragging us deeper into a sea of need. "We have to find her," Marisol whispered, clenching her fists as the fear within her coiled into resolve. "We can't let another person be lost. We just can't." A sense of purpose ignited deep within me, forging a path forward amidst the turmoil swirling in our minds and hearts. "All right, Miguel," I said, adrenaline surging through me. "We're going to find your sister. We won't let the shadows take anyone else." But as I said those words, a creeping sense of foreboding settled over me, a taut string vibrating with the knowledge that whatever lay ahead would demand more than Kuragite, would demand sacrifices we weren't yet prepared to make. The shadows lurked just beyond our reach, whispering promises of despair, and I could feel their collective breath on the nape of my neck, beckoning. What we were about to face would test not just our strength, but the very bonds that tethered us to each other and to the light. And I couldn't shake the feeling that in our desperate quest, we might just summon a darkness greater than any we had known before. The chill from the night seeped into my bones as I held on to Miguel, his small frame shivering against the weight of fear. We were standing at the edge of something unknown, the horizon painted in shadows that loomed larger by the second. Marisol and I exchanged glances filled with a shared determination, a silent pact uniting us for the battle that lay ahead. "Let's move," I said, the urgency of Miguel's situation echoing in my heart. "We'll find your sister." It wasn't just a promise. It was a lifeline, an anchor in a storm that threatened to swallow us whole. The shadows that had once felt daunting now seemed like a challenge waiting to be confronted. Though fear danced at the edges of my consciousness, a new fire ignited within me, fueled by our desire to protect those who had been lost and for those who still needed salvation. Marisol took Miguel by the hand, squeezing it reassuringly before leading the way out of the courtyard. The alley stretched before us like a dark gullet, funneling us toward the chaos surrounding the remnants of Mr. Thompson's sacrifice. Each step felt heavy with purpose as we navigated through the wreckage left behind. The stark reality of our situation slamming into me like a concrete wall. Stay close, and don't look back, I instructed, my voice firm as I swept my gaze over the remnants. The ghost of the past felt both haunting and tangible, clinging more fiercely with every breath I took. Each whisper of wind against my skin called forth memories of the bus driver's courage, a reminder of everything he had given for this very moment, the need for connection, for courage intertwined with sacrifice. As we moved deeper into the fray of shattered glass and fallen bodies, the sirens continued to wail in the distance, creating a dissonant choir alongside the panicked shouts of those who had fled. The chaos of it tinged my nerves. Raw memories of that harrowing night replayed in each crack and creak around us, filling the air with suffocating dread. Then, from beneath the thick veil of shadows, I heard Ida faint cry. "Help, please." It was a faint whisper battling against the overwhelming noise. My heart constricted. "Miguel," I gasped breathlessly. "Is that your sister?" He nodded vigorously, tears pooling in his eyes. "Over there." He pointed toward a broken-down bus half buried in debris, the remnants of a world that had briefly existed before the storm. I felt a surge of adrenaline as we raced toward the sound, urgency propelling us forward. My fingertips grazed the cool metal as we approached the bus, and I held my breath. "Is anyone in there?" I called, hoping against hope that the shadows hadn't claimed more than they already had. And then I heard it again, the muffled cries of a child echoing from within the twisted metal frame. "Hold my hand," Marisol instructed Miguel, who clutched her tightly. She stepped carefully into the wreckage, her determination molding the shadows into something we could conquer. I followed closely behind, my heart hammering against my ribcage as I pushed past the remnants of chaos to reach the open door. The interior was shrouded in darkness. I could barely make out the figures tangled amid the disarray. But then I saw Hera's small girl trapped beneath a heavy sheet of metal, tears streaming down her dirty face. "Maria?" Miguel screamed, and with that singular sound, my resolve hit a crescendo. I dove toward the girl, my arms outstretched, determination coursing through my veins. "Keep calm, Maria. We're here," I reassured, even as panic danced in my chest. Our connection stretched beyond the confines of fear. I could feel her spirit mirroring Miguel's need beneath the weight of despair. "We're going to get you out. Just hold on." As I grabbed the edge of the metal debris, Marisol joined me, her hands trembling with effort. We grunted and pulled together, our strength fueled by the love that had brought us this far. The metal shifted slightly, and a flicker of light broke through the dark, illuminating the girl's frightened eyes, shimmering with a mix of trust and fear. "Help me," Maria cried, voice laced with desperation as her tiny hands reached toward Miguel. "I'm scared." And I felt the air thicken. With each pull, the walls surrounding us felt tighter, darker, the shadows whispering ominously in the recesses of my mind. "You're not alone," Miguel shouted back, his eyes blazing with ferocity. "We're right here." Suddenly, with an almighty heave from all three of us, the metal creaked and fell away, just enough to allow Maria to wriggle free. I pulled her into my arms, swirling gratitude filling, the breath escaping my lips in a rush of relief. "You did it," I exclaimed, fear ebbing away like a tide. Maria clung to me, her small body trembling against my chest, while Miguel wrapped his arms around his sister. "You're safe," he cried, relief splashing over his face like sunlight breaking through clouds. But even in that moment of triumph, the shadows watched from the corner of my vision, their presence a constant threat. "We need to go," I urged, beckoning Marisol toward the exit, our path illuminated by the flickering emergency lights bathing the scene in red and blue hues. But as we scrambled back out into the night, the darkness surged toward us again, the air vibrating with anger. "You think I'd let you escape that easily?" A voice boomed, heavy with malice, echoing from the depths of our fears. It was the manned embodiment of chaos threatening to tear apart the thread of family we had woven together. In that moment, dread washed over each of us like a tide. We had saved Maria, yes, but the fear of losing everything clawed at our hearts. And then I saw Ida flicker of desperation in Miguel's eyes, a reflection of the raw need to protect his sister, and I felt an insurmountable wave of courage envelop us once again. "Together," I shouted, voice carrying over the cacophony as our collective spirits ignited once more. Our hearts were intertwined in a quilt stitched from love and sacrifice, and we wouldn't let it fall apart not now. As the shadows loomed and rushed forward, I prepared to fight, fueled by the connection we shared. Together, we were stronger than any darkness that sought to consume us. And if love had taught me anything this night, it was that even the most profound sacrifices could spark the flames of resilience and hope amidst despair. Forward, I yelled, hand in hand with Marisol, Miguel, and Maria, as we surged into the chaos that lay ahead, a gentle defiance against the tempest that sought to swallow us whole. With courage brimming like molten gold in our veins, a fierce determination pulsed within me that rang true. Together, we would overcome. The shadows faltered as we pressed onward, defiance growing with every step. No matter the price, we would fight with every ounce of strength we possessed, for love forged bonds that darkness could never sever. And as we reached toward the light ahead, one thought burned bright. We would make it through, together. Beyond that darkness, the world awaited us, a canvas of untold stories and unyielding hope mixing together, forging a new dawn. And so, hand in hand, we charged into that radiant unknown, knowing that in the scope of our struggles and sacrifices, we would carry the memory of those we loved like a beacon to light our path. When we stepped out into that new day, the haunting shadows would be behind us, etched into our hearts, yet powerless against the fierce resilience that courage had unleashed, a swirling tapestry of love, bound by threads of hope that would guide us through the unknown forevermore.